Tonight, lesson 6 of Advice for Life, the final lesson, and we always save the best for last. And so this one's quite a powerful one, a very important one, and very practical. Not to say that the prior 5 weren't important and weren't practical, but in Judaism, everything hakol vilech achar hachitum, everything follows the sealing, the completion. And so this is definitely a powerful class. They say the story of there were 2 friends who meet um, quite regularly. And one day, as they're meeting up, one friend turns to the other and says, "You look a little out of it. You look like something's bothering you. What's going on?" And he says, "Well, I just met my doctor, and my doctor told me I'm going to have to quit drinking." He's like, "Oof. I mean, that's really tough." He says, "I know it's really tough. After 30 years, I'm going to have to get a new doctor." Um, when it comes to self-help, they say the guy who comes to Barnes and Nobles and he said, I think I shared this one already, but it's definitely an important one because today is all about self-help. Comes to Barnes and Nobles or Borders or your favorite bookstore, maybe Amazon, and he says, where is the self-help section? And the individual says, well, if I told you that, I'll defeat the purpose. Tonight is all about self-help. And not just self-help, it's about personal growth, about taking that personal growth and becoming an influencer with it, not an influencer in the modern sense of TikTok, Instagram, social media, etc. Perhaps that as well, but an influencer in our surroundings, to ourselves, to our family, to our immediate surroundings, um, and really these ideas, as we've shared in the past, each class are gleaned from the Rebbe's teachings, primarily the Rebbe's letters and interactions with many, many people, advising people, thousands, tens of thousands of people throughout the decades. And it's really um, powerful to see this advice, especially nowadays when it is ever important and practical, and perhaps more than ever. See, when it comes to personal growth, it's something that we as humans do naturally. Humans naturally need to grow. We have this innate need, this innate drive to become a better person, right? We in every area in life, we're constantly looking to grow. Throughout the centuries, throughout the millennium, throughout the even recent decades, years, as a people, as a race, human race, we're constantly growing. We don't suffice with the inventions, how ingenious they were 1,000 years ago. We're not satisfied with it, and we're looking for something greater. Right? Humans came up with the idea of how to fly, but we didn't suffice with running or riding on a bike or getting into some sort of horse and buggy. Now let's fly. Right? We take things much farther. We take things much greater. Modern technology and everything in the world really around us shows us this idea, this innate nature to grow, to change, to become better. And even on a personal level, people are constantly looking on how to become a better person. Self-help industry, booming industry, right? Thousands of books printed on the topic. Why is that? Why is it so successful? Because it's something that innately we do as human beings. And this idea is not a new idea. It's not a new concept that the world's discovered. It's something that even King Solomon points out. Let's have a look at text 1, page 145. King Solomon points out in Ecclesiastes, how many understand that the spirit of the human ascends on high while the spirit of the beast descends to the earth? Now, we're not putting down beasts, animals. They're great. But you know what? Status quo. Animals are very good. They're eating the same grass they ate 5,000 years ago. They're walking the same way they walked. They're journeying the same way they journeyed 5,000 years ago. Nothing changed, right? They're not looking to grow. They're constantly down there, eating the grass. They're very satiated, satisfied with that. Humans, on the other hand, says King Solomon, the spirit of the human ascends on high. We're constantly looking to grow. We're constantly looking to become a better person, spiritually and on a literal level, as we just explained. This human quest to improve has a very standard idea on how that looks, and perhaps that idea, that standard idea, is within Torah as well. And then the Rebbe has a revolutionary approach to this goal, innate goal of us human beings to constantly grow, a revolutionary vision on how it should be done, and revolutionary ideas. And we see that within the thousands of letters, some of which we will see today. When it comes to growth, we can have different ideas on how that looks. Now, if you look at your books on page 144, exercise 6.1, we're not going to, you don't have to do it. We're not marking anything, but look at the exercise, right? I'll read it here. Imagine that you resolve to grow in your spiritual and Jewish life. Here are 6 activities that will carry you in that direction. Number them in the order you believe you should follow. Right? So, what's the order? What are the 6 items? There are 6 items: study more Torah to get a deeper understanding of Judaism, study Jewish history to develop a deeper understanding, a deeper sense of connection in Jewish identity, meditate on God to develop greater feelings for and a deeper relationship with God, work at inspiring your fellow Jews to grow in their Jewish lives, do another mitzvah, attend Shabbat services. So, if you are looking to grow your Judaism, what do you think your order of these 6 items would be? It doesn't have to be something concrete, it doesn't have to be something, but it's something to think about, because we're going to circle back to this exercise. Now, in general, when it comes to this human quest to improve, there are 2 ways of looking at it. We're going to say, break it down kind of for simplicity. We can say that the general approach to the road to improvement, self-improvement, the general approach, the classic approach, as it's termed here on the screen, the classic approach is bottom up, inside out. What do I mean by that? What is bottom up, inside out, right? If you're climbing, think about bottom up, right? Climbing a mountain. Classic approach, when you climb a mountain, you want to go to Mount Everest, right? There's just running and starting to climb. What's the big deal? I can put on my shoes, I can get my gear, and then, start climbing, right? Such an individual, chances are, will never reach the peak. Not only won't reach the peak, perhaps they won't even reach the first base camp, second base camp. Why? Because before you even attempt to go climb the mountain, there's the steps you need to do before then, right? And what are those steps? Those steps need to be, you need to study the mountain. You need to get in shape. You need to do exercise. You need to make sure that you have enough protein. You have to make sure that your body's enough fat and that your body's enough muscle. You have to make sure that everything's in order, that you're in order physically. Once you're in order physically, and once you've been running and you've been doing exercise and your cardio's up to date, etc., now you can even consider climbing that mountain. And even once you climb the mountain, you got to make sure you have the right guide, and you have the right Sherpa, and you have the right gear, and you have the right knowledge of how to go on that mountain. It's not just, I got 2 feet and now I'm going to go climb that mountain. There's lots of preparation. That is the way you climb a mountain. It's bottom up, not just the technical, literal mountain, but it's bottom up also. You got to work on yourself to become someone who is able to go up that mountain. This idea of bottom up is a concept that we have in Judaism as well. All right, have a look on page 146, text 2. Mi Ya'ala V'har Hashem, King David from Psalm 24. Who shall ascend the mountain of God, and who shall stand in his holy place? One who has clean hands and pure heart, who has not borne my soul into vanity, and has not sworn deceitfully. In other words, what's King David telling us? You want to climb the mountain of the divine, you want to reach great, lofty spiritual heights, you got to first clean house. You got to first make sure that you're clean. You have to make sure that you get rid of your negative tendencies, that you get rid of your negative character traits. You work on yourself on becoming someone spiritual, and then you'll move your way up slowly but surely. right? They say the story of Yankel in the old village, the old shtetl, and he goes to visit the big city. And in the big city, he is invited to a home, lavish Shabbos lunch, and the cholent is served. And in the cholent, he served a wonderful delicacy, the taste of which he's never had. It's an exquisite taste. It's delicious. It's enjoyable. And he turns to the owner and to the host and he says, "What is this?" He says, "Oh, this is kishke, right? Kishke. Some of you may be familiar. Kishke is, I think it's called stuffed derma, right? In the olden days, what would it be? They take the intestines and they'd stuff it with all different types of goodies, and meat and flavors and spices, right? Stuff it gets cooked, and it has a real rich, good taste. Nowadays, it's an excuse. It's not real derma. It's not real intestines. It's some wax paper that's stuffed with all non-dairy, non-meat. Sometimes meat, but usually it's just a mixture of flour, of sugar, of spices, of beans, of various other things stuffed into um, wax paper. But be it as it may, right? So this Yankel, he's eating, he's enjoying his kishka, his stuffed derma, and at the end of Shabbos, he goes ahead and he asks the host, can I get the recipe of this delicious dish? And the host says, sure, not a problem. Gives him the recipe, and he follows it to the T. Put in 1 teaspoon of this, and 1 teaspoon of that, and these spices and sprinkle in. He matches the recipe. It's all perfect. He goes home and tells his wife, "This is the best delicacy from the big city. You got to make it." They get a derma, they stuff it. It's wonderful. His wife cooks it, and the house has a smell that's you can't withstand. They taste it, and it's horrible. Finally, Yanko, a couple months later, makes it back to the city, and he tells the host, he says, you gave me this recipe. For some reason, I made the same recipe, and it tasted nothing like your kishka. The host says, so tell me, did you first clean out the derma before you stuffed it? Right? So before you stuff the derma, obviously you got to clean it out. If you don't clean it out, let's not even go there. So in order, what's the idea of bottom up? Bottom up is in order for you to gain to spiritual heights, first you got to clean out yourself. We got to make sure, right? Individuals should make sure that there's no negative tendencies, that they work on themselves spiritually. Once they work on themselves to get rid of the negativity, now they can grow in greater spiritual heights. And this is actually what the verse in Psalms tells us, text 3, page 147. Turn away from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. Look at the first half of the verse, right? What's the order? The order is very important. First of all, King David says, you want to gain spiritual heights, you want to have self-improvement, you want to go somewhere, great, gain spiritual heights, turn away from evil. Step one, clean yourself up. Then do good. But before you do good, before you gain spiritual heights, you got to first clean it out, right? You move into a new house. The first thing you do is not bring in the furniture. First thing you do is clean out all the junk. You have a team come and clean the old house, the house, and repaint it and work out. Then you can bring in all the new furniture. Same idea here, right? You want to self-improvement, work your way up. Start from the bottom, work up. Then you have the second idea, right? When it comes to self-improvement, or when it comes to influencing others. When it comes to influencing others, what do you want to do? First, work on yourselves. First, work on yourself. Then you can affect others. Similar idea to bottom up, right? There's a system in place, right? What happens when you go on an airplane, right? What do they tell you? First, put the mask on, the oxygen mask, right? In case of turbulence, whatever, in case of drop in oxygen, first put on your own mask, then assist others, right? When it comes to interpersonal improvement, it's inside out. Inside, first the eye, first work on yourself, first put on your own mask, then go ahead and help the other individual. And we see that same idea in the Talmud. Have a look on page 147, text 4. Right? Same page as the earlier text, the lower on the bottom, text 4. Beautify yourself and then beautify others. Says the Talmud, inside out. What's the idea of beautify yourself and beautify others? First, work on yourself. You want to improve others? No problem. But first, you got to improve yourself. Once you yourself are improved, you want to positively impact yourself, you must first improve yourself. Then you can go ahead and work on improving others, right? Which is perhaps a self-understood concept. If you want to go ahead and help other people, if you're not there, then how can you go ahead and help other people, right? It makes sense. It's logical. It's what in the Torah, the Talmud seems to be telling us here. And there's a powerful vart, as we say in Yiddish. A vart means a saying, but it's perhaps a little deeper than a saying. It's something to live by, of one of the early Hasidic masters who's known by the town he lived in as is the norm. He was called the Kutzker, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk. And there's a saying that's attributed to him, which is, when I was younger, I thought I would change the world. As I got older, I decided I'm going to work on my city, and later I concentrated just on my family, but now I've decided to just try and change myself. What's the idea? This exact idea, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. Change yourself. Change yourself, then you can go ahead and change the world. But first things first. First, change yourself. This is the general idea of personal growth, of taking that personal growth and going ahead and affecting others, influencing others, is this idea to have inside out, bottom up, right? First, bottom up, start from the beginning, start slowly, work on building it, then you'll get to the top. And then inside out, first work on yourself, then you can influence others. But the Rebbe has a revolutionary outlook on personal growth and on affecting others around us. The Rebbe's idea is that we don't go with baby steps. We got to go big. We got to go big. We got to leap. We got to jump. And we got to go straight for the top. We don't have time. We cannot utilize precious resources of our time on slowly reaching the top. We need to make the big jump. All right, have a look on text 5, and this is perhaps the basis of everything we will discuss tonight. This is a statement from the fourth Chabad Rebbe, who was explaining on how to treat obstacles in any area in life. And Rabbi Shmuel Schneerson, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, says as follows. Text 5, the world advises that when facing an obstacle, if you cannot go under it, you must leap over it. I maintain, leap first. In Yiddish, we say, lechatchila ariber. Important statement. Lechatchila ariber, leap first. Don't even bother going under. You reach an obstacle, soar over it. Don't try to grapple with it. Don't try to go around it. Don't try to go under it. Just soar over it. Leap over it. Leap first approach. That is the idea. We don't have the luxury nowadays. When it comes to ourselves, when it comes to others, when it comes to the world around us, especially as it relates to Judaism, we do not have that luxury to go ahead and make baby steps, to go ahead and to crawl around it, to go under it, to try to grapple through it. We don't have that luxury. The clock is ticking to what? To the coming of Mashiach. The clock is ticking to the world as we know it coming to an end, not to the end of the world. You know, they say the story of two religious-looking individuals on a road holding a sign, and the sign says, "Turn around, the end is near." And this car comes zooming past them, sees the sign, and continues going. And in 3.5 seconds, suddenly they hear a scream and a large splash as the car goes over the edge into the water. And one religious individual turns to the other and says, perhaps we should have worded that sign a little differently. It's a race against the clock because once Mashiach is coming closer. And if Mashiach is coming closer, we got to do everything we can to make the world a better place. We got to do everything we can to perform more mitzvahs. We got to do everything we can to encourage others to reconnect to their Jewish heritage and perform more mitzvahs. And if we got to do everything against the clock, we don't have the luxury to go slowly. We got to go big. And the Talmud utilizes a very interesting metaphor for this concept. Text 6. Right? This world is like a banquet. Grab and eat, grab and drink. You may have heard the expression chaparain. What does chaparain mean? It's a Yiddish expression. Chap means to grab. What are you grabbing? Right? Imagine you come to a banquet. Now, the banquet was called for 6 o'clock, but you weren't able to make it. The banquet ends at 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, doors are locked, kitchen's closed. You're done. Right? Now, if you come at 6 o'clock, you got time. Take your plate, right? It's a buffet. You take your plate. You go to the first course. You go to the second course. You listen to the keynote speaker. You watch the entertainment. You go to the third course. You get the, dessert table. You got time. Everything's slowly. Everything's calm. Everything's easy. There's a system. There's an order. But you weren't able to make it there at 6. You know when you showed up? Doors close at 12. You showed up 11:50. You're famished. You know what you're going to do at 11:50? You're going to run in, grab a plate, stuff whatever you can on the plate from course 1, course 2, course 3, the soup, this chicken, the wine, the hors d'oeuvres, the desserts. You're going to grab everything because you know what? You got 10 minutes. You're grabbing everything. You're putting it on the plate to make it in just before the closing of the doors. Says the Talmud, right now, this era that we're in is the race against the clock. There's 10 minutes left. And we got to grab the opportunity. We got to chaparine. We got to grab every opportunity we have. And we don't have the luxury to follow protocol like those who came at 6 o'clock. So you know what? In generations earlier, perhaps they had that luxury. But nowadays, we do not have that luxury. We need to grab the opportunity. We need a chaparine. And this idea, this is the Rebbe's general approach when it comes to personal growth and when it comes to influencing others. You got to leap, you got to jump, you got to chaparine. Lechatchila ariber, right? What do we say? Leap first. And where do we see this idea? Let's have a look. We're going to analyze it from 3 different scenarios, 3 different case studies, perhaps, as we did last week, right? Until now, we said, what's the general approach when it comes to self-improvement and when it comes to, influencing others? So there's the bottom up, inside out. The Rebbe said, we got to do the exact opposite. We got to do top down, outside in. What does that mean? That means as follows. Let's have a look on text 7a. Text 7a is the first case study that we're going to discuss where we see this idea of outside in. What's the outside in approach? The outside in approach will be crystallized with this letter. This letter was a teacher. In 1959, was writing to the Rebbe about various points about teaching, and the Rebbe responds to him with this letter. Text 7a, page 150. You ask me, how can I involve myself in disseminating the teachings, directives, and practices of Chabad to others when I have not yet fulfilled the dictum, beautify yourself and only then beautify others? I have two responses to your quandary. Firstly, it is not acceptable to withhold these teachings from individuals in your surroundings simply because you are not the way you should be. After all, your personal deficiency is not their fault. And we'll get to secondly in a moment. But what's the first point that Rebbe's mentioned? It's not about you. It's not about you, right? We said inside out. Now it's outside in. It's not about you. It's outside in. You need to look at what needs to get done. So when it comes to beautify yourself and then beautify others, what's the idea? I'm not ready to teach. Who says you have to be ready to teach? Is it the student's fault that you're not ready to teach? You know a little bit about the topic, teach that little bit that you know. You don't know the whole topic, no problem. You'll go along slowly as it moves, but right away you need to start teaching. You don't have that luxury to wait until you know the entire topic before you can go ahead and start teaching the other students. So whereas the standard approach is, right, we focus on the teacher's needs. In order for a teacher to communicate an idea, he's got to know the entire idea, the entire subject, the entire topic before he can go ahead and start, even begin teaching that idea to the student. The Rebbe's approach is focus on the student's need. The student needs to learn, and needs to learn when? Not in a year from now. Not when you're done prepping. The student needs to study now. So teach him what you know now. You don't know the entire topic? No problem. You'll get there. But the idea is jump right in. It's not about you. It's about what needs to get done. Not about you. Have a broader, bigger outlook on the idea. And secondly, the second point of the letter, the Rebbe tells this individual, text 7b on page 151. Secondly, when you set the goal of beautify yourself, you must seek and exploit all possible methods and means of increasing your success. Now, when you are acutely aware that you will soon face numerous individuals and you will have to discuss important topics with them, that awareness will itself most certainly assist you in your battle for self-improvement and make your victory far quicker and easier. The Rebbe is telling this individual, you know what happens? In other words, the first thing first, outside in. Outside, you got to go and see what the student needs. You got to go ahead and teach them what the student needs. You're not perfect in your understanding. You know what? Whoops. That itself, by going ahead and having the outside, you'll move right in, into yourself. You yourself will now become better de facto. Because if it's just in the abstract, then you're going to have to start reading books upon books and searching how to completely understand the entire subject. But you know what? Once you have students and the students are asking you questions and you know that you're going to have to answer those questions, that itself will assist you in your own battle for self-improvement, in bettering your understanding in these topics, in fulfilling your completeness of the subject. So don't have the inside out first. Wait until you're perfect in the subject. You master the subject. Now you can go teach it. No, first start teaching whatever you know. And then the mastering the subject will come on its own. It'll help you on your own. Which leads us to the first video of tonight's class. It's a fascinating story about an individual, a bride and groom. They were about to get married, and she was concerned. And she came to the Rebbe for advice, and the Rebbe advised him this exact idea, which is quite fascinating. Let's have a look. He's also a pretty good storyteller, so let's have a look at this clip.
Rabbi Meshulam Weiss and his wife Eileen were married in 1957. 3 days before their wedding, they had a private audience with the Rebbe.
So I gave the Rebbe the zettel, and the Rebbe looked at it, read it, and then he looked up, and he said to us, "Yiddish?" So I said, yeah, I speak Yiddish, I understand Yiddish. And my Kala, she said to the Rebbe, I understand Yiddish, but I don't speak it that well. I don't express myself that well in Yiddish. So the Rebbe said, all right, when I speak to the chassan, I'll speak in Yiddish, and when I speak to the Kala, I'll speak in English. And that's what he did. So maybe a few seconds goes by, and all of a sudden, my wife starts to cry. And she looks at the Rebbe, and she says to him, can the Rebbe please ask the chassan to leave the room? I want to speak to the Rebbe in private. Well, I was in shock. I think the Rebbe was also in shock. And the Rebbe gave me a look, and I just backed out and walked out of the room. As I came out into the hallway, our Grona came running over. He says, where's the Kala? I said, she's still inside. He said, no, you can't do that. We don't do it that way. I said, well, that's the way it is. What am I going to do? And maybe about a good 20 minutes goes by that my wife is inside with the Rebbe talking. And then she finishes, and she opens the door. She says, the Rebbe said you should come back in. So I come back in, and I forget exactly how we were talking, but we more or less the chiddush was ending at that point. And we started backing to the door, and the Rebbe got up from behind his desk, and he walked us to the door. And the two shayimim were waiting outside. My wife went on her way, and I went my way. And the next time I saw my wife was under the chuppah. And after the chuppah, we, of course, went into the yichud room. And as soon as we went into the yichud room, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, what did you talk to the Rebbe about in there for 20 minutes? So my wife said, well, I hope you're not upset. I told the Rebbe I want to call the wedding off. This was, remember, Thursday night, we're getting married Sunday. And the Rebbe said, why do you want to call off the wedding? So I said to the Rebbe, because I have a terrible temper. I have no patience, and I lose my temper very easily. And until now, there's something, a chassan kala, he doesn't see everything because, but once we're married, it won't take long. He's going to realize he made a big mistake. He married a wrong woman, or he married a shrew, and we'll probably end up in divorce. So I've been thinking about it, she said, and I decided I would rather not get married at all than get married and get divorced. So I said, so what did the Rebbe say? She said, the Rebbe smiled. And the Rebbe said to me, in English, the Rebbe said to me, I'm going to tell you something. The Rebbe is going to bless you with many children. And the children will teach you patience. So there's no reason for you to call off the wedding. And until you start having the children, you should do volunteer work in a hospital, preferably with children in the hospital. And that will also help you become patient with people. And your temper will not be a problem.
So this is the exact idea, right? Here's an individual, this bride and groom, they're coming to the Rebbe 3 days before their wedding. And what does the Rebbe tell them? Tell this bride, right? Outside in. Outside in. Normally, right, the normal circumstances would dictate inside out. You got to work on your temper first. You got to work on your patience first. But you know what? Who says that'll ever happen? The idea is we don't have that luxury. It's outside in. Get married. You'll have children. Your children will teach you how to have patience, how to have, how to be calm. And until that point, go work with children. Go to a children's house, volunteer. Act upon it. Do it. See what the issue needs to get done. Don't think about yourself, and that yourself will be fixed in the interim. Now, just parenthetically, I want to clarify a few points that might have not been too clear in the video, some points that he kind of mentioned in passing. Um, the wedding, he said, was Sunday night. The custom is that a day, 2, 3 days before the wedding, some do it up until a week. There's no set amount, but a certain amount of time before the wedding, according to Jewish custom, the bride and groom do not see each other. And so Thursday night was when they had this private audience with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would bless the bride and groom. I think he said it was 1959. I don't recall 60. Either way, so they had this private audience with the Rebbe, where the Rebbe ostensibly was going to give them a blessing for their upcoming wedding. And then once they left the Rebbe's room, that was kind of the start of the wedding preparations, where they had these escorts. The idea of an escort is that the bride and groom, for those few days when they don't see each other, that entire time, the bride or groom is not allowed to walk alone anywhere. So the bride wakes up in the morning, the groom wakes up in the morning in their own respective homes, and there is someone who escorts them. And the idea is right now they're a king and a queen, and they do not go anywhere alone. And that escort sticks with them all through the week of celebration for the wedding. So, right, Kai and I got married few days before our wedding. We spoke a little, right? We didn't see each other until our wedding. From that time, wherever I went to the synagogue to pray. I had to have someone with me. I don't walk in the street alone. I went to the market, got in the car. Someone was with me. My brother, my cousin, a friend. Someone was with me the entire time. Echai the same way. Wherever she went, her sister, her mother, her father, her brother, her cousin, wherever, that's the way it works. And then once you get married, the bride and groom, they don't go anywhere alone. The bride and groom go to a store. That week, it's not respectful for a king and queen to go somewhere alone. So they have an entourage, an escort, someone who goes there with them. Obviously, in their own home, they can be alone. The bride and groom as well, before they get married in their respective homes, they're alone. But once they leave the home, it's with someone else. So that's what he's talking about, that, right after they left the Rebbe's room, they went on their way. So they didn't have time to discuss this occurrence where she had a personal conversation with the Rebbe for 20 minutes. Rabbi Groner, who we've mentioned numerous times throughout the prior 5 lessons, or various people mentioned them in video clips. Rabbi Groner was one of the Rebbe's secretaries. He was the one who would stand in the hallway outside of the Rebbe's room, directing the flow of traffic for the meetings into the Rebbe. The meetings would take place, generally speaking, up until the mid-70s, 3 times a week. And they would take place Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights. They'd begin shortly after the evening prayers, and they'd go till the wee hours of the morning. So about 10 hours every night, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and there would be hundreds of people. Depending on the night, some people would speak to the Rebbe and have these private audiences for 2-3 minutes, and others, would be there for 2-3 hours. It was all, what the Rebbe decided. The normal amount of time was 2 minutes. That was the rule, and after 2 minutes, the Rabbi Groner, the Rebbe secretary, would just walk into the office. Sometimes the Rebbe would motion for him to go out, and others, the Rebbe wanted to continue longer. Other times, that was the cue for those who were in the Rebbe's office for them to stand up or just walk out, because some people didn't feel comfortable sitting in the Rebbe's presence. So that's just a general. Perhaps I should have given that introduction before we even started, considering that we've had a number of these people sharing their stories. Be that as it may, and parentheses. So here we have the story, this same idea where what does the Rebbe advise her? The Rebbe tells her, it's not about you. In other words, it's about you, but don't work on fixing yourself before the problem. The problem will fix on its own if you focus on what others need. You focus on the need, you focus on what others need, and that will in turn help the situation at hand. Which leads us to the second point when it comes to charity. This is a talk that the Rebbe gave in 1957, which is a fascinating talk because it has some personal side to it. The Rebbe speaks about himself, which was a very, very rare occurrence. The Rebbe not very often, the Rebbe rarely spoke about himself. Even when he didn't speak about him in first person, and it would take people in the know to know that the Rebbe was speaking about something that occurred with him. Usually, so here we have a unique instance where the Rebbe speaks about his thinking his thought process while studying a certain area in the Torah. And we have this fascinating idea, which is shared, perhaps the second case study, the idea of focusing on the others, of outside in, and not thinking about yourself first, the inside out. Let's have a look. It's a little bit of a long text, but it's a powerful text and it's an important one. Text 8 on page 153. I believe the English is 154, but either way, 153, 154, text 8. This is a talk the Rebbe gave in 1957. A Hasidic discourse states that charity should be given in an infinite manner. That was the first time I encountered such terminology applied to giving charity. Says the Rebbe, as I studied the discourse, I asked myself how it might be possible to give charity in an infinite manner. After all, charity entails giving money or physical resources with monetary value. How can any physical entity possibly be infinite? Right? It's almost like a math equation. Something physical is not infinite. If it's not infinite, how can you do it infinitely? You can do it a lot. You can give a lot of charity. You can give a tremendous amount, but you cannot give infinite amounts of charity because charity is limited. It's a physical resource. Continues the Rebbe. Now, Judaism delineates several standards of charitable giving. According to the typical standard of charity, we donate 1/10 of our earnings. That is considered the proper minimum margin. Then there is the standard of 1/5, which is considered a generous margin of charity. Finally, there is a standard of charity referred to as charity by judgment, whereby we judge ourselves honestly to determine the amount we require to sustain our own existence so that we can donate everything beyond that amount to charity. According to the latter standard, our charity is not defined by a specific percentage. It is neither a 10th nor a 5th, nor even a specific figure greater than a 5th. Nevertheless, in the final analysis, even such giving has a limit. For even if we were to give away all that we possess, it would still add up to a quantifiable sum. So what does it mean that charity is infinite? How do you have infinite giving? And here's the punchline. And it's a very powerful statement. Rather, there is an entirely different approach to giving charity, whereby we do not consider ourselves as. Instead, as soon as we encounter someone in need, our response is to immediately resolve that need, however large it may be, without considering whether we own that amount or not. In other words, the degree to which we feel the pain of our fellow and relate to their need is infinite, unequivocal, and unconstrained, so that there is no room for any calculations whatsoever regarding our personal needs. We have but one consideration. We must provide the needy individual with the amount they require. If we do not have that sum ourselves, we will put every effort into obtaining it. And when we truly make this resolve, God will certainly assist us in fulfilling this mitzvah. What does that mean? As follows, right? When a person gives charity, there's two ways of giving charity. We can focus on ourselves and we can focus on the receiver. If we focus on ourselves, it's about me. If it's about me, it's very limited. It's impossible to be infinite. You cannot be an infinite giver, right? I can only give a certain X amount of my income, of my profits. I can give 10%, I can give 20%, I can give the third form, which may add up to 50, 60, 70, even if it adds up to 95, even if it adds up to 100%. It's still 100%, it's quantifiable. It's not infinite. It's constrained, it's limited by the resources of the giver. But when it's focused on the receiver, in other words, my outlook is that person needs help. And that person needs help. And that person needs help. It crosses my desk, it comes across my attention. I'm going to do whatever I can to help them. I feel their pain, I feel the need. I'm going to do whatever I can to help them. I don't have the resources, I'll make phone calls. I've made phone calls, I'll try to help myself. I'm going to do every effort I can to go ahead and fix the situation. If that's my outlook, that it's about what's needed, not about me needing to give, then it is indeed infinite. Because if it's about what's needed, if it's about the receiver, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help them to make sure it's not about me. It's about them getting what they need. Then God will ensure that they will get what they need. God will help us in fulfilling this mitzvah, and God is infinite. And so if it's not, what's infinite isn't the amount that's being given. What's infinite is the feeling that we have, that we will make sure that the receiver has what they need, whatever it takes. And God will ensure that that will get taken care of. So in other words, if we look at it inside out, it's about me giving charity because I have an obligation to give 10%. Then once I reach 10% or 20% or 50%, I've reached my limit. But if it's about outside in, it's about what that person needs, and then I'm going to do what that person needs. We take the leap. That person needs $100,000 to survive. He's going under. His house is. We're going to get the 100,000. My 10% is only 15,000. No problem. I'll make phone calls. I'll make some connections. I'll network. Right? We'll get it done. That's infinite. That's lechatchila riba. That's the leap first. That's the outside in. We get the job done. Not focusing on ourselves. It's not about us. It's about getting the job done. And this leads us to a second video on this topic, the second clip, sharing this exact idea about helping others.
Rabbi Moshe Tzur is the founder and administrator of a number of educational and charitable institutions in Jerusalem. In 1969, he was serving in the Israeli Air Force.
We was in Bir Gavrafa without any good conditions and good food. One day stopped trailers and gave to each one of us a package. It's a Chag Purim Sameach from the Rebbe Milubavitch. And we all was wonder who is the Rebbe. It was like a Fata Morgana in the middle of the desert to receive a piece of candy and regarding from somebody that really care for you. And I was very impressed. On 1971, in the Milchemet HaAtasha, one day Chabad people asked us to put a tefillin. At that time, you don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday or Shabbat, and all of a sudden somebody asks you to put a tefillin. So when I started to say Kriyat Shema, I tried to say it, Shema, Israel, and I knew it, so I said it like fluently, and then I got crying because it was very emotional for me, and since that days, I got back to my religions. When I come to Chicago, I got to know Rabbi Daniel Moskovich, he should rest in peace. I become very close to Lubavitch community and to Chabad. And he used to come to my warehouse every Friday in the morning. And one time they honored me in some dinners that the Chabad house did. And I was twice in Ityachdut with the Rebbe. And one time he asked me what I'm doing, and I had an idea to be helping some more Jewish community. And he was telling us how is important the mitzvah of ve'afta le'racha kamocha, to love the others just like you love yourself. And the Rebbe was like asking a question. Why is the heart of the person, of the human being, is in the left side? Because in Judaism, the right is the chesed. If it's so important, why Hashem didn't make the human being create that the heart will be on the right side and not in the left side? So the Rebbe, he should rest in peace. He say that when a Jew look at the other, he have to know that the heart is for the others. Because when I look at you, Your heart is in my right hand, and my heart is in your right side. So when the heart is over the other, then you really make the mitzvah of Ve'afta l'reacha kamocha, because the heart is not for you. The heart is always for the others. Since then, thank God, I came back to Israel and I established 2 important yeshivot and 4 kollelim. And I think that the Rebbe definitely did a very important message in me and in my mission as a Jew. It changed all my perspective about life.
So here we have the idea that when it comes to giving, when it comes to helping others, it's not about us, it's about the other. And if it's about the other, we can accomplish so much more. We can accomplish infinite amount, as opposed to if we look at it, that it's about us. Outside in, which changes us as well. When we focus on others, that makes us a better person as well, right? And the Rebbe told this individual, why did God create that humans, their heart is towards the left side and not towards the right side, when in Jewish thought, the right side represents kindness? So the heart, which is ostensibly where the kindness stems from, at least metaphorically, right? The feelings, the emotions, the giving comes from the right side, comes from the heart. So the heart should have been towards the right side, yet it's towards the left side. Why? Because it's towards the other's right side. It's all about the other. And when we think about the other, we can accomplish so much more. When we can think about, we ought to think about the other, because then we can reach the infinite, which leads us to the third case study. And the third case study is perhaps, when it comes to Chabad houses, right? Someone, a colleague of mine says, this is the secret of Chabad, right? You look at what the Rebbe established throughout the world. Thousands of Chabad centers, fastest growing Jewish organization in the world, perhaps the most successful, collectively, Jewish organization in the world, growing by leaps and bounds, pun intended, right? Making that major leap. And doing something that was perhaps unimaginable, taking Chabad, which was almost non-existent as a result of being decimated by the war and by Stalinist Soviet Union, and years, decades under communist rule, and yet the Rebbe transformed Chabad into a major force of good. What is the basis of that, right? Someone once told me he doesn't like organized religions. I said, perfect, come to a Chabad house, right? Or anything but organized. So what's the idea? Come to organized religion. And what's the idea of Chabad? The idea of Chabad is this idea. The Rebbe trained many generations. The Rebbe trained Chabad leaders that the idea is, it's not about what I have. It's about what needs to get done. If it's about what I have, then your resources are limited and what you can accomplish is limited. If it's about what needs to get done, if there's a tremendous amount that needs to get done, then that's the amount of resources that we need to have, right? The chicken or the egg, here it's definitely the chicken or the egg, or, you get the idea. But the idea is, in other words, it's not look at what I have and that's what I'm going to do. It's look at what needs to get done and that I'll make sure to have. Right? And case in point, many layers of this idea, but case in point, right from the get-go, it's not, Chabad isn't, set up that way by chance. We don't have that much support anymore. We don't have that much infrastructure. We're just starting off. It's entrepreneurial. No, it's like that by design. And here's a letter from 1951, really from the get-go, of the Chabad Yeshiva in Montreal, in Canada, which is a yeshiva that my great-grandfather merited to be one of the founders of in 1942 when he first came from war-torn Europe. He escaped the Nazis. He made it to Shanghai in China and Japan, depending on which part of the war. And later he made it to Canada in 1942, and he founded, together with 8 other of his buddies that were yeshiva students in Poland at the outbreak of the war, they founded the Chabad Yeshiva. So it was that Chabad Yeshiva in 1951 that the Rebbe writes the following letter. Have a look on text 9, page 155. In regard to the discussion at your meeting concerning the deficit in the yeshiva's budget, I have already addressed this in my earlier conversation with you here in New York. Up until now, you tried to run things in a limited way, i.e., to direct your spending in accordance with your income. You should now try the opposite approach. That is to endeavor to increase your income in accordance with the needed expenses. This is in accordance, right? This is the saying that keeps on coming up with the saying by the Rebbe Maharash, Lechatchila Ariber, which was given over by my father-in-law, the Rebbe, in the name of his father. The world advises that if you cannot go under an obstacle, you must leap over it. I maintain leap first with the proper determination. Right? So here's a perfect example of the idea. Here's a school, and case in point, they were having trouble with accepting new students, because they didn't have the funds necessary to accept the new students. And new students, new funds, especially following the war, 1950s, you had a lot of immigrants, you have a lot of people who can't afford a private school, and a Jewish school, by definition, is a private school, and it's a big cost, it's a tremendous budget. Says Rebbe, until now, you were doing things inside out. Let's see how much resources we have. Based on how much resources, that's how many students we can have. Now do things outside in. See how many students need to be accepted. And based on the amount of students that need to be accepted, accept them and go ahead and fundraise more and go ahead. And now your budget's bigger. Mazel tov, you got a bigger budget. Right? So it's not inside out, it's outside in. And I'm just going to direct your attention to the end of the book. This is not a text that's in the class, but it's in the additional reading at the end on page 164. Similar idea as it pertains to a school, right? If you have the book, it's on page 164, the letter that's clipped. You asked whether it is advisable to invest in the purchase of a large and beautiful building for the yeshiva, or whether it is preferable to initially make do with a more modest building, right? Which one? Should we go ahead and splurge and buy a bigger building for the school, or should we make do, because that's the amount we can afford? What do you think the Rebbe answered? Of course, the bigger one. There is the famous saying of the Rebbe Maharash. This is a letter from even a little earlier than the letter we just quoted, I believe. No, a little later. This is a letter from, I want to say 1956, 57. There's a famous saying of the Rebbe Maharash. The world claims that if you cannot crawl under an obstacle, try to leap over it. However, I say we should leap over it in the first place. We are also taught that when we proceed with determination, the results fall into line. I'm therefore certain that if you pursue the option of the large building with the necessary determination, you will be successful. So the idea is outside in, but know that the in will, with God's help, match the outside, match the need. If you go inside out, who knows if you ever reach the demands, the needs. But if you go outside in, with God's help, you will reach the amount that you need. So the idea over here is the same idea that we've been speaking about until now, right? When it comes to activities, building communities, what do you need to do? You need to go outside. You need to see what the needs are, and then the budget will match it. And the same idea, back to the additional reading on page 162, right, where the little stroller is. Page 162, right? Chabad families, big families, right? Many religious families, big families. Why is there big families, right? How does one usually go about having a family? Got to make a calculation. What's my income? What's my spouse's income? Based on the income, how much is it going to cost to raise a child? How many children can we afford? Right? But that's the inside-out approach. What's the other approach? The outside-in. Let's have a look on page 162, a statement from the Rebbe from 1983. When people are informed that they have a mitzvah to bear children, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, they may argue that they are not ready because before becoming parents, they must first perfect themselves in Torah knowledge, awe of heaven, and personal conduct. Only then can they feel equipped to raise and educate children appropriately. In response to this argument is, leap over it in the first place, right? That same statement that keeps on coming up, leap over it. Yes, such arguments have a logical basis. Nevertheless, our practical conduct must be to leap over the obstacles and just do it, right? To quote Nike, just do it. So Nike says, it's Nike's gift to the world, just do it. That is the idea here. The Rebbe uses the spiritual, obstacles perhaps that one may perceive when having children, or metaphysical, emotional, and the same applies that the Rebbe mentioned many times when it comes to the financial idea. So what's the idea? The income needs to cover the expenses, right? But the starting point shouldn't be the income. It should be the needs. And then the income should follow suit. And so these are the three case studies that we presented here, right? We had the first one of the unqualified teacher. Don't wait to beautify yourself. Don't wait until you know and master the topic. Go ahead and start teaching. And this is something that the Rebbe stressed time and again, and once used the term, if you know the letter Aleph, teach Aleph, even if you don't know base. In other words, if you know that first letter of the Jewish alphabet, teach it. You may not know the second letter yet. You'll get there, but you got to teach, because you know what? As the Rebbe once used the metaphor, there's a fire burning spiritually. And we got to do what we can to influence the world around us, to make the world a better place. We do not have that luxury of kratzing, of waiting around, as we say in Yiddish. We need to go outside in. Then we use the example of infinite charity, of giving charity, that when it comes to helping another, we have to help outside in. It's not about us, it's about the needs that need to get done, and then we will follow suit with divine help. And finally, we use the example of Chabad around the world. The idea of the way a Chabad house is that it's a reverse budget. It's see what needs to get done, and the budget will follow suit. It's do what needs to get done, and then figure out what the budget is based on what needs to get done. We're not done. That is the idea of, right, outside in. But we also spoke about, right, bottom up. Bottom up. You want to work on yourself with building yourself up, right? Where's the starting point? From the bottom. You got to go in baby steps. You got to figure out the mountain. You got to, right, analyze. That was the idea. The starting point is where I am now. Assess your position and then gauge what the next step has to be. Gauge where you're headed. Gauge how to get closer to your goal. Says the Rebbe, no, the attitude has to be top down. The attitude has to be top bottom, right? When it comes to doing good. We don't say, first, I'm going to work on myself to become someone who eradicates negativity, eradicates negative character traits, and then I'm going to go work on doing good. You know what? We don't have that luxury. Mashiach's coming. The world around us needs us. We need to influence the world for the good. We don't have that luxury. So what should we do? Start doing good. Just start doing good. And you know what? The more good you do, automatically that will cause the negative character traits to fall away. The same Kutzke that we mentioned earlier, that Hasidic Rebbe we mentioned earlier, he once said that he envisions a time, perhaps the time is now, when people won't sin, not because they understand that sin is wrong, but they won't sin because they want to have time to sin. They'll be so busy doing good. Right? So the idea is, the starting point is go big. The starting point is top down. The starting point is do good. Whatever good is, good for yourself. Do a mitzvah. Don't sit and grapple. Do I understand it? Do I not understand it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Just do it. Do a good act. And once you do the good act, the understanding, the feeling, the getting rid of the negativity, that'll follow suit. But just get up and do it. Once again, getting back to Nike, just do it. Don't go from the baby steps and first trying to understand it, right? When it comes to spiritual needs, two ways of looking at things. One is, I want to first understand what I'm doing. You know what? I'm going to put on tefillin, but before I put on tefillin, let me first understand what I'm accomplishing. Let me first purify myself, make sure I'm holy, make sure I'm ready to do such a holy act of wrapping tefillin or lighting the Shabbos candles. And then once I understand it, it'll take 6 months or whatever, then I can go ahead and start doing it at its level. Or that's a bottom up. Or top down. Top down is just do the mitzvah. You'll have time to study about it. You won't have time. You'll figure it out as it goes along. But just do it, because we need more mitzvahs in this world. We need more acts of goodness in this world. And everything else will follow suit. And the Rebbe pointed out that this idea, we see it with the 12 plagues, with the 10 plagues, right? It's getting late at night. I'm saying 12. We see it with the 10 plagues. Again, we mentioned earlier that the order is very important. What's the order? What's the first one of the 10 plagues? Plague of blood. What's the second one of the 10 plagues? Plague of frogs. What happened with the plague of blood? There's water, which is naturally cool. And then there's blood, which is naturally warm. The water transformed to blood. The coolness transformed to passion, to excitement. What's that? That is a metaphor, says Kabbalah, for taking the coolness to performing holiness, the indifference of performance of holiness, and transforming it to passion for the performance of the mitzvahs, of doing good deeds, right? Which is what? Ascent, doing good. To paraphrase the term from Psalms that we had earlier, right? Ascent, do good. What's the second plague? The second plague is frogs. What happens? Frogs is the exact opposite. Frogs are coming. Frogs are cool. And the verse tells us that the frogs went into the ovens of the Egyptians. In other words, so not only did they ransack the homes and go all over the place, and there were mounds upon mounds and thousands, hundreds of thousands of frogs all over Egypt. But part of the plague was that these frogs went where? Even into the fiery ovens. What does that symbolize? The exact opposite. The passion of, what do ovens symbolize? The ovens of the Egyptians symbolize the passion of negativity, the passion of negative character traits, the passion of doing things that are unholy. And here comes the frogs created by God, and they are cooling down that passion. In other words, going away from evil, right? So based on the verse that we mentioned earlier, what should have been first? The frogs. The plague of the frogs should have been first, because what does the frog symbolize? Fixing ourselves, going away from the evil. What does the blood symbolize? Doing good. Based on the verse, first you should go away from the evil. First you should clean house. First you should clean the derma, right? To use the story that we mentioned earlier, not to get too graphic, right? First we should clean it out, and then we can stuff it with everything good. And then we can go ahead and bring in the furniture into the home. Then we can go ahead and do what? The plague of blood. Yet what's the order? The order is first blood and then frogs. Why? Because it was right before leaving Egypt. And before leaving Egypt, they didn't have that luxury to first figure out what they're doing wrong, fix it, and then do good. No, we got to do good from the get-go. Let's have a look in text 10, where the Rebbe makes this point. All of the narratives, including in the Torah, serve as directives and guidance for the generations to come. Similarly, the Torah's account with the plague of blood representing warmth and passion for doing good, preceding the plague of frogs representing dispassion for negative matters, directs us to follow suit. We must focus on doing good right from the start. As the Rebbe Marash said, and we can, all say this together, we know this statement. The world advises that when facing an obstacle, if you cannot go under it, you must leap over it. I maintain leap first consequently. We also need this approach of leaping over in the sense of immediately working to reveal an abundance of light that will consequently, on its own, dispel the darkness. That's what we got to do. We don't have time. We must dispel the darkness. How do we dispel the darkness? By doing good, by doing mitzvahs, which is why, right, the campaign, when it came to working with others, when it came to helping other people do mitzvahs, it's not about first sit down with them, right? Explain to them what God is. Explain to an individual what they're accomplishing by performing the mitzvah. And then 6 months down the line, do the mitzvah. No, it's do the mitzvah right away. Right? If you've ever met a Chabad rabbi or Rebbitzin, what's the first thing they ask you? Or second thing after asking you your name, or if you're Jewish, right? First thing, would you like to wrap tefillin? Not what are tefillin, or do you know what you're accomplishing with it? No, let's first do the tefillin. Then everything else will follow suit, top down, right? Do you light Shabbos candles? Here's candles to light Shabbos candles. You don't know what it is, you don't know a Shabbos? No problem. We'll figure that out next. First do it. And we see that countless times. The way the Rebbe advised people is go ahead and act, top down, leap, go for the jump. You're not perfect, that's fine. You'll get to that. Once you work on the top and you go down, it's easy. Just go straight for the win, straight for the action, straight for the mitzvah. Let's have a look in text 11. I believe this is the last text. Text 11. We could argue that in order for a Jew to begin performing mitzvot and drawing closer to God, they need to first learn about Judaism and about the laws and the mitzvahs of the Torah. They especially need to learn about God, his relationship with the world in general, and his special relationship with the Jewish people. They also need to understand the significance of the mitzvot in general and of each specific mitzvah. In other words, we could argue that in order to do mitzvot, a person requires a proper introduction and training, comprehensive knowledge, etc. Only once that has been achieved is it possible to proceed with observing the mitzvahs in a proper way, as befits the commandment of God. To counter this argument, the Torah shares the story of Abraham. God told Abraham, go from your land. Just get up and go. At that point in the narrative, the Torah had not informed us at all about Abraham's virtues and achievements. And that is precisely the lesson for us. The very foundation and starting point of Abraham's coming close to God is when God told Abraham, go. A leap began with an action. He had to do something to carry out a divine command in actuality. And that's what the Rebbe is telling us. The idea is every single one of us, we're connected to God. We're connected to God. And there's nothing more natural for a Jew to do a mitzvah. So it's not about let's first figure it out, let's go through the steps, let's go through the motions, and then we'll reach it. No, just jump right in because that's who you are in your essence. Jump right in, top down. And top down, that'll bring everything into focus. What we have next is a video clip of Mr. Gordon Zacks. Mr. Gordon Zacks was a famous Jewish leader in Ohio. I believe it was Columbus. He was director of not the Jewish Federation, but something similar. Quite a famous individual. As the founder of a number of companies, a great activist. I believe he was some sort of political leader as well, not leader, an actor as well in the Bush administration, senior, perhaps in some other administrations as well. He's quite a famous personality, and he had a long and beautiful relationship and correspondence with the Rebbe. And here he shares a little bit of insight into that relationship and a specific aspect of it pertaining to this exact topic. So let's have a look at Mr. Gordon Zacks.
In 1969, Mr. Gordon Zacks was chairman of the UJA's Young Leadership Cabinet. Shortly after delivering a keynote address to 3,000 communal leaders from across the U.S. and Canada, he was informed that the Rebbe wished to meet with him.
I'm escorted into the Rebbe's study. And I'll never forget it if I live to be 100. This man, there are books piled all the way to the ceiling, all around the office. He stands up. He has these penetrating blue eyes, crystal clear eyes. His skin is almost translucent. I mean, not a wrinkle. Just an incredible, peaceful, penetrating look in his eye. He said, Mr. Zacks, I have read your speech. It is clear to me that you have taken good care of your mind. I can look at you, and it's clear to me that you've taken good care of your body. What are you doing for your soul, Mr. Zacks? That was the opening to the conversation, which lasted an hour and a half. So he says, do you believe in revelation? I said, I believe in God, but I'm not sure I believe in revelation. I believe that the Bible was inspired by God, but I haven't yet accepted the fact that it's word for word written by God. Now listen to this. I mean, this is when it really gets amazing. He says, Mr. Zacks, Your problem is you're trying to think yourself to God. You can't think yourself to God. You have to experience the why, the how of being Jewish. And in the living of a Jewish lifestyle, you will discover God. He's within you. But you're trying to connect to him through your head. You have to connect to him through your heart. And you can't get there through your head. You got to get there through experience. He says, let me send a member of my community to live with you for a year and teach you how to be Jewish. If at the end of the year you find God in your soul, in your heart, you have achieved the greatest gift that you will ever have in life. You've got to release yourself from this mental approach to life and God and come with me in this journey of the heart.
What's the idea of this video, of this conversation that Gordon had with the Rebbe? Just, I wasn't there, I don't know, and this is how he shares the story. I based on other stories and other letters of the Rebbe, I'd say that the Rebbe didn't say, I will send someone to live with you and teach you how to live like a Jew. The Rebbe probably told him to put on tefillin every day, or to do a tangible mitzvah, because we see that time and again that that's what the Rebbe told people. A story I've repeated many times with Professor Green, who had a similar conversation with the Rebbe that was in correspondence. He refused to wrap tefillin, and suddenly he started wrapping tefillin, and all his intellectual questions, he says, fell on the wayside. It's not that he didn't want the answers, it's like he didn't have the question once he started wrapping tefillin. Because what's the idea? The idea is the same. You got to go big. You got to go to the top. And the top is doing the mitzvah. That is the most important part, the action. The actionable item is the most important part, not the discussions, not the conversations, not the mental exercises and intellectual exercises. It's jump right into it. Just do it. And once you just do it, that's top down. Now, an interesting follow-up to this, Gordon Sachs, I wanted to present the video. I couldn't figure out how to put it into the presentation. But in 1988, 19 years later, if I'm not mistaken, they had a number of correspondences between them, but he hadn't come visit the Rebbe from that personal meeting until 1988. In 1988, it's a video of him walking by, coming to visit the Rebbe, and he tells the Rebbe that he had just facilitated a $500,000 donation, if I recall correctly, for for a Chabad in Ohio or for some Jewish organization. And the Rebbe starts telling him that last time we met in person, you said so and so. And he looks at the Rebbe in this astonishment and he says, wow, Rebbe, you're amazing. That was 19 years ago. How do you remember that? You are amazing. And the Rebbe looks at him and the Rebbe says, what's it going to help that I am amazing? Tachlis. Tachlis means, action. What is the actionable item that you're doing? Because the Rebbe tells him that if you gave a $500,000, now you got to give $1 million. That I'm amazing, that's not going to help the Jewish community that you're supposed to be doing, right? So yes, maybe amazing that I remember you and remember what we spoke about 19 years ago. But Tachlis, what's that going to help? How does that help the Jewish community that I've mentioned to you? You should give $1 million donation to, to further Judaism, to help Judaism in your area. So that was always the idea that the Rebbe shared time and again, is the idea of top down. Don't grapple with the details. You'll get to the details. You'll get to the details at the end, but make that leap. And what's making that leap? Making that leap is both outside in and top down. Is to do action is key. And that's why I mentioned the exercise that we had in the beginning. We have it here at the end on page 159. It's the same idea, right? When we look through these ideas, if we're trying to grow and advance in our spiritual and Jewish life, perhaps we would have said to study more Torah, to study Jewish history, to meditate on God. But you know what? Now we see that it's exact opposite. We want to advance our spiritual and Jewish life. What would we say goes first? Do a mitzvah, right? Attend Shabbat services. Do another mitzvah. Inspire fellow Jews to grow in their Jewish life. Yeah. I once heard a story. The Rebbe told an individual who was a college student. He said, the Rebbe, the college student was talking to the Rebbe, and then the Rebbe told the college student that when he goes back to school, he should help others wrap tefillin. So he tells the Rebbe, but I don't wrap tefillin daily myself yet. So the Rebbe says, no. So it's their fault you don't wrap tefillin yet. You got to help them wrap tefillin. You don't wrap tefillin, all right, you'll figure it out. Maybe you'll start wrapping every day once you start wrapping others. But it's not the other's fault that you don't wrap yet every day. Go ahead and wrap other people, right? And that in turn will give you the fortitude, the courage, the understanding of studying Torah, studying Jewish history, of meditating on God. But the first thing we got to go is outside in, caring for others, and top down, making that leap, seizing every opportunity that comes our way to do another mitzvah. Now, this idea of doing another mitzvah, right, of seizing the opportunity, which opportunity do I begin with? Which opportunity, right? Mitzvahs, the 613 commandments, so even if we can't fulfill all of them, because many of them are connected with the temple, and we do not have a temple, may be speedily rebuilt in our days. But which mitzvah do I begin with? So for that, the Rebbe started the mitzvah campaigns. Mitzvah campaigns, we've discussed it many times. There were many campaigns, but they were narrowed down, really. The Rebbe started various campaigns, which really, about 14 campaigns. The campaigns of the mitzvahs, the Rebbe's mitzvah campaign, if we look on page 161, right? So we have the initial 10 mitzvah campaigns that the Rebbe had. Look at page 161. We have, first campaign was lighting Shabbat and holiday candles. The second campaign is putting on tefillin. The third one is making sure we have kosher mezuzahs. Fourth, study Torah. Fifth is give charity and make sure you have charity boxes throughout the home and in the office. The sixth one is to get Jewish books for your home. More the merrier. Have a Jewish library. You will study them. You won't study them. It's important to have that library. Seventh campaign the Rebbe made is eating kosher food. Encourage yourself to grow in eating kosher food and others. The eighth campaign is to make sure that Jewish children have a Jewish education. The ninth campaign is to love your fellow Jew as yourself. And the 10th one is the mitzvah of family purity and mikvah. And in addition to that, the Rebbe started a campaign for everyone owning a letter in a Torah scroll. It's perhaps one of the simpler campaigns. It's just a one-time thing where we purchase a letter in a Torah scroll. And another campaign, which was the campaign of studying about the coming of Mashiach. So if we're talking about leaping right in, this is a map, which we've discussed many times, of why this is the makeup. At the end of last course, we discussed the power of, at the end of the first lesson, we discussed the power of these, that many are connected with the Jewish home. But the idea is, this is the map that we can take, perhaps, to go ahead and start with one of these things, start with a mitzvah, just jump right in, leap right in to do something. And I'll finish off with a story. And they say the story of an individual who wrote to a sage and said that, I'm in prison for whatever reason. And unexpectedly, this is a story that took place in the shtetl many years ago, and people are thrown into prison for no reason. And here's an individual, he's thrown into the dungeon. There's no basic rights. There's no religious rights. He wasn't able to wrap tefillin. He wasn't able to do any mitzvahs. And he writes to the Jewish sage that he's going to be he has an option to get one day out. He can get one day out of a dungeon, and he'll be able to perform mitzvahs. So he asked the sage, which day should he choose? Perhaps should he wait till Rosh Hashanah? Should he wait till Yom Kippur? Should he wait till Passover? He'll be able to eat the matzah on Passover. Which day is the most important? What do you think the sage responded? The sage responded, today. You have a chance to do a mitzvah? Do it. What's going to be Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, in a month, in 6 months? Who knows? But right now you have a chance. Leap. Do the mitzvah. Do it now. Do the action. Do the actionable mitzvah now. And the idea is to focus on the action, to focus on doing. I'm just going to, before stop the recording, I'm going to complete with a short promo for the upcoming course, following course, beginning in mid-May. So bear with me. It's a 1-minute promo, and then I will end the recording.
Nowadays, people don't really get lost anymore. For the most part, society has mastered the art of navigation. But how do we navigate the next frontier? Sometimes we need new tools to navigate new terrain when it matters the most. What tools will you have to find your way? Introducing Decisions of Fate, your Jewish compass for navigating questions of medical ethics. Enroll today at myjli.com.